Welcome back, seekers of wisdom, to day 20 of our 30-day Wisdom Quest Challenge. In our last session, we explored the sacred pause, the profound art of creating a space between the world's stimulus and our own response. We learned that in that space lies our power and our freedom. Today, we take that power, that freedom, that moment of conscious choice, and we learn how to string those moments together, day after day, week after week, year after year, to build a life of purpose and achievement. If non-reaction is the art of mastering the moment, today's topic is the art of mastering a lifetime. Imagine every human soul is given a magnificent blueprint. This blueprint is unique to you, a grand and intricate design for the most beautiful cathedral, the most brilliant work of art, the most profound discovery your life could possibly become. It is a map of your highest potential, a picture of the person you are capable of becoming. Now imagine you are also given a quarry filled with all the necessary materials, the heavy stones of effort, the great timbers of time, the fine metals of focus. The blueprint is inspiring, beautiful, and light as air, but the materials are heavy. The vision is glorious, but the work is arduous, demanding, and often tedious. What then determines whether that grand cathedral of your potential remains a faded, dust-covered drawing in a forgotten room of your heart, or whether it rises, stone by patient stone, to touch the heavens? The answer, the master skill, the quiet, unglamorous, and formidable power that translates vision into reality, is our subject today: self-discipline and willpower, the architect of your life. We will explore how this power is not a joyless punishment, but the ultimate expression of self-love and the truest engine of our freedom. Our story is an allegory. It takes place in a beautiful, sun-drenched city known to its inhabitants as Ethelberg, the city of blueprints. The city was unique in all the world. Upon reaching adulthood, every citizen was gifted a personal blueprint, a luminous, magical scroll that unfurled to reveal a breathtaking design for their life's greatest potential, their most important goal. One person's blueprint might show a magnificent ship capable of exploring unknown oceans. Another's might depict a grand library containing all the world's stories. Another's might show a beautiful terraced garden that could feed thousands. The blueprints were not mere drawings. They pulsed with a gentle inner light, a constant, inspiring reminder of what could be. The potential in Ethelberg was palpable. It was a city literally glowing with promise. But there was a deep and pervasive paradox to life in Ethelberg. The blueprints were gifts, but the act of building was not. The raw materials, the stones of effort, the timbers of time, the mortar of consistency were available to all, but they were heavy, difficult to work with, and required daily, patient labor. And so, the magnificent city of blueprints was also tragically a city of unfinished dreams. Everywhere you looked, you could see the glorious beginnings of monumental projects. The soaring arches of a half-finished aqueduct stood against the sky, a testament to a brilliant idea that faltered. The strong foundation of a community hall that never rose past its first floor was now a gathering place for weeds. The meticulously carved keel of a great ship that was meant to sail to the edge of the world had begun to rot in its dry dock. The city was a testament to the near-universal human condition, the vast, heartbreaking gap between our grandest intentions and our daily actions. It was a city of masters of starting and apprentices of finishing. It was a city consumed by the subtle, pervasive, and patient thief of dreams, procrastination. The citizens would often gather in the city's pleasure gardens, lamenting their lack of progress, blaming the heaviness of the stones or the difficulty of the work, all while their blueprints, tucked away in their homes, grew just a little bit dimmer. In this city lived a young man named Liam. He was known throughout Ethelberg, and he was known for the sheer, breathtaking brilliance of his blueprint. It was a design for a magnificent observatory, a tall, elegant tower that spiraled towards the heavens, crowned with a great silvered telescope designed to map the stars and unravel the secrets of the cosmos. When he first received it, the city had held a festival in his honor. His potential was seen as the city's great hope. Liam was passionate, intelligent, and deeply in love with his vision. He could spend hours talking about the nebulae he would discover, the comets he would track, the universal truths he would uncover. But he was a master procrastinator. His worksite on a beautiful hill overlooking the city was a tragic portrait of his condition. A small, perfectly laid foundation was there, the result of a powerful surge of initial motivation that had lasted a full month. A few beautifully carved stones, each one a testament to his skill, sat nearby, the product of a week of inspired effort a year later. But mostly, the site was overgrown with the weeds of distraction and littered with the debris of abandoned attempts. His daily cycle was a quiet, private agony. He would wake with the sun, his heart fired with resolve. Today is the day, he would tell himself. He would unroll his glowing blueprint and feel the familiar surge of inspiration. He would dress for work, gather his tools, and walk with a determined stride to his hill. But then the struggle would begin. He would look at the next stone he needed to quarry, and it would seem impossibly large. He would look at the complex calculations needed for the next step, and his mind would feel foggy. And then the whispers would start. The whisper of a friend passing by, inviting him to the pleasure gardens for a game of chance. The whisper of the warm sun on his skin, suggesting a nap would be more pleasant. The whisper of his own mind, telling him he wasn't quite ready, that he needed to do more research, that he should start tomorrow when he felt more inspired. Almost every day, he would succumb. He would tell himself it was just for an hour, but the hour would bleed into an afternoon. He would return to his home in the evening, his body rested, but his spirit heavy with the familiar acidic taste of self-loathing. He was living a life of constant, low-grade betrayal of his own best self. And he had noticed, with a growing sense of dread, that his blueprint was beginning to fade, its luminous light growing dimmer and more translucent with each passing season of inaction. There was one place in the city that stood in stark contrast to the landscape of noble failures. In the very center of Ethelberg stood the great library, a building so vast, so beautiful, and so utterly and completely finished that it seemed like a miracle, a myth made real. Its soaring towers and graceful arches were a source of both inspiration and shame for the citizens. It was the only grand blueprint in the city's living memory to have been brought to full completion. It was the work of the master architect, an old woman named Elspeth. She was a figure of legend, a living embodiment of mastery and self-discipline. She was revered, but also seen as something other, something almost inhuman. The other citizens, mired in their own procrastination, whispered that she must have had some secret, a magical tool, a hidden source of strength, or perhaps that she was simply born without the human desire for ease and distraction. They saw her discipline not as a skill she had cultivated, but as a gift she had been given, for that was an easier story to tell than the one that might indict their own lack of effort. Liam's turning point, the moment the pain of remaining the same finally became greater than the pain of changing, came on the night of a rare lunar eclipse, an event his observatory was designed to study. As the shadow of the world crept across the face of the moon, turning it a deep blood red, the entire city gathered. But they did not gather on his hill. They gathered in the great plaza, in front of Elspeth's library, whose high balconies and pristine grounds offered a perfect view. Liam stood alone on his lonely, weed-choked hill, beside his few scattered stones, his heart aching with the profound, unbearable agony of his own unrealized potential. He could hear the faint sounds of celebration and wonder drifting up from the city below, and every cheer felt like a personal accusation. He looked down at the warm light spilling from the hundreds of windows of the great library, a beacon of a realized vision, a testament to a promise kept. The contrast between that radiant, finished work and his own desolate, silent hill broke his heart. That night, sitting in the dark, holding his fading blueprint like a dying ember, he made a vow. He would swallow his pride, his fear, and his deep shame. He would seek out the master architect. He would beg her to teach him her secret. He found Elspeth not in some grand office, but in the library's quiet scriptorium, a vast circular room filled with the scent of old paper and beeswax. She was patiently mending the delicate binding of an ancient book. She was old, her hands gnarled with age and work, but her eyes were clear, and her focus was absolute, a palpable force in the silent room. Liam, feeling like a clumsy, overgrown child, stood before her for a long moment before he could speak. Finally, he unrolled his magnificent, fading blueprint on her work table. In a torrent of words, he confessed everything. His passionate love for his vision, his grand dreams of the stars, and his profound, paralyzing, and shameful inability to act upon them. He told her of his daily cycles of procrastination, his broken promises to himself, his deep fear that his potential would flicker out and die completely. He ended his confession with a desperate plea. "What magic do you possess, Master Elspeth? What great power allows you to complete such a work, while the rest of us fail? I will do anything to learn it." Elspeth finished stitching a perfect knot, her movements economical and precise. She looked up from her book, and her gaze was both kind and piercing, seeing not just the desperate young man before her, but the fading light of the magnificent blueprint he held. She smiled, a small, weary, but gentle smile. "There is no magic, young man," she said, her voice quiet but firm as old wood. "There is only a misunderstanding, a fundamental error in your thinking. You believe that self-discipline is a cage, a joyless punishment you must inflict upon yourself. You see it as the enemy of your freedom and your comfort. You believe that I am made of something different than you are. But I will teach you the truth. Self-discipline is not a cage. It is the key. It is the only path to the only freedom that matters. And it is not a gift. It is a skill. It can be learned." This was the beginning of Liam's apprenticeship. Elspeth, seeing the genuine desperation in his eyes, agreed to teach him. But she warned him that she had no secrets to give, only disciplines to practice. She would guide him through what she called the 5 disciplines of the architect. The first discipline, the nature of the muscle. Your first misunderstanding, Elspeth began on their first day of instruction, leading Liam not to a work site, but to a quiet study with 2 comfortable chairs, is that you believe willpower is a matter of moral character. You think that on the days you fail to work, you are a weak or bad person, and on the rare days you succeed, you are a strong or good one. This thinking is the source of all your shame, and shame is the heaviest, most useless stone of all. You must learn the science of willpower. Think of it not as a virtue, but as a muscle. It is a very real, finite resource of mental energy. She explained, with the clarity of a master teacher, the nature of this muscle. It can be strengthened over time with consistent, progressive training, she said. But it can also be exhausted on any given day by overuse. You wake in the morning with a full store of this energy. But every single decision you make, from what to eat for breakfast, to what color shirt to wear, to how to respond to a difficult letter, depletes this muscle just a little bit. You spend your mornings making 100 trivial choices, flitting from one thought to another. By the time you arrive at your work site to face the truly heavy stone of your great work, your muscle is already tired. You are asking a weary man to perform a heroic feat. Of course you fail. An architect, she continued, protects their willpower as their most precious asset. They create routines and habits for the small things. They eat the same breakfast. They wear similar clothes to eliminate trivial decisions and save their mental energy for the work that matters. They ensure they have enough sleep, for a tired mind has no willpower. They eat good food, for the brain is a hungry organ that runs on fuel. Do not blame your character for a failing that is merely one of poor energy management. Your first task is not to work harder. Your first task is to manage your energy with the care of a general preparing for a great battle. Treat your willpower not as a magical well, but as a precious and finite resource. That is the first discipline. The second discipline, the art of the small stone. Your second misunderstanding, Elspeth continued a few days later, after Liam had begun to track and manage his daily energy, is that you believe your great observatory must be built with great, heroic acts of effort. You are waiting for a tidal wave of inspiration to carry you forward, a surge of motivation that will allow you to move a mountain in a single day. This is a fantasy. This is why you fail. This was Liam's lesson in building habits. Elspeth took him to the base of her own great library, a building that seemed to have been raised by giants. She ran her hand over the massive foundation stones. "This library looks impressive now," she said. "It feels like an impossible achievement." But for the first year of its construction, it was nothing but a hole in the ground. For the second year, it was a single layer of stones, barely visible above the grass. My secret was not a heroic effort. My secret was a simple, unbreakable, and what many would call a boring rule. I laid one stone every single morning. She looked him in the eye. Some days, when I was filled with energy and inspiration, it was a large, difficult stone that took hours to quarry in place. Some days, when my spirit was low or my body was tired, or when grief laid a heavy hand on my heart, it was a tiny stone, no bigger than my fist. I would carry it to the site, place it on the wall, and my work for the day was done. But every single day, without fail, I laid a stone. The act of showing up and honoring the routine was more important than the size of the stone itself. Consistency is a force of nature more powerful than any single burst of inspiration. She taught him the architecture of habits. She explained the loop: a cue, a routine, and a reward. Your cue, she instructed, will be the rising of the sun. Your routine will be to walk to your worksite and lay one stone, just one. Your reward will be to come back here, to this journal, she said, handing him a beautiful leather-bound book, and place a single, satisfying mark for the day. Your only goal is this: do not break the chain. Do not focus on building the observatory. That goal is too large. It will crush you with its weight. Focus only on the habit. Focus only on laying one stone. That is how you begin overcoming procrastination. You make the task so small, so simple, that it is harder to invent an excuse to avoid it than it is to simply do it. The third discipline, the fortress of focus. Your third misunderstanding, Elspeth said during his next lesson, as Liam began his practice of laying a single stone each day, is that you believe your worksite is public ground. You allow the distractions of the city, the gossip, the games, the endless invitations, the dramas of others, to wander through your mind as you work. An architect must be a ruthless guardian of their space and their time. This was Liam's lesson in setting boundaries. Every yes to a distraction, Elspeth explained, her voice sharp with emphasis, is a no to your great work. Your focus is the most valuable currency you possess. It is more precious than gold. You must build a fortress around it. When you are scheduled to work, that time is sacred. You must learn the simple, powerful, and often difficult magic of the word no. No to the friend who invites you for a drink when you had planned to work. No to the interesting news from town that can wait until evening. No to the voice in your own head that tells you to check just one more thing on your social feed, to read one more story, to tidy one more corner of your home. These are the thieves that steal cathedrals. She taught him practical methods for this. Create a ritual, she advised. When you enter your worksite, that is your sacred space. Leave the world of distraction behind. For that 1 hour or 2 hours, you are not available to anyone else. including the less disciplined version of yourself. Schedule your deep work time in your calendar as if it were the most important meeting of your life, because it is. It is a meeting with your own potential. And you must also schedule your time for leisure and friendship with equal seriousness. A disciplined life is not a life without joy. It is a life where joy and work each have their proper, protected place, and one does not constantly steal from the other. The fourth discipline, the true blueprint. As Liam began to practice these disciplines, he found he was making slow but steady progress. A long chain of marks began to fill his journal. A neat row of stones began to extend from his foundation. But some days, the struggle was still immense. He confessed to Elspeth that sometimes the act of laying his one stone felt absurdly small and meaningless against the sheer, overwhelming scale of his blueprint. "That is because you have forgotten the fourth discipline," she told him, leading him back to the table where his blueprint lay. "You have forgotten why you are laying the stone. You have become focused on the task, but you have lost the vision. You must connect the smallest action to the largest purpose." She had him unroll his blueprint again. "This is not just a building," she said, her voice soft. "Look at it." "What is it, really?" Liam, thinking for a long moment, replied, "It's a way to see the stars." "And why do you want to see the stars?" She pressed gently. "To understand our place in the universe," he whispered, the old forgotten passion returning to his voice. "To feel awe. To remind the people of our city how small our worries are and how vast and beautiful the cosmos is. To give them a sense of wonder." "There," Elspeth said, tapping the blueprint with her finger. "That is the true blueprint. The stone you lay tomorrow is not just a stone. It is a step toward wonder. It is a moment of service to your city. It is an act of love for the cosmos. When the work feels hard, when the stone feels heavy, when the motivation fades, you must unroll the true blueprint in your mind. Self-discipline is not about forcing yourself to do something you hate. It is about remembering, in a moment of difficulty, the deep love you have for your ultimate goal. That love is the fuel that keeps the fire of your willpower burning." The fifth discipline, the architect's freedom. After many months of practice, Liam's worksite had transformed. A significant portion of the observatory's foundation was now complete, a testament to hundreds of consecutive days of work. He felt a pride and a sense of calm he had never known. But he had one final question for Elspeth. "Master," he said, "I feel more in control of my life than ever before. But the other citizens, they see my routines, my boundaries, my daily labor, and they call it a prison. They say I am no longer free." Elspeth led him to the highest balcony of her great library. It was a beautiful, sunny afternoon. They looked out over the city of blueprints, at the people flitting from one pleasure garden to another, laughing and playing games, while their great works languished, their own blueprints fading in their homes. "You must teach me the final discipline," she said, a rare, playful smile on her face. "You must tell me, Liam, who is truly free." Liam looked at the people below, who seemed so carefree. He saw his old friends, the ones who had called him boring. He saw them chasing after every passing whim, every distraction, every fleeting desire. He saw their magnificent blueprints, their immense potential, lying dormant and neglected. They were free to do what they wanted in any given moment, but they were not free to become who they were meant to be. Then he looked in the distance at his own rising tower, a structure born of his own conscious, daily choices, a physical manifestation of his will. "I see now," Liam said, a profound understanding dawning in his eyes. "They are not free. They are prisoners of their own impulses. Their lack of discipline has trapped them in the small world of immediate gratification. They are slaves to the next distraction, the next easy pleasure." He paused, looking at his own hands, calloused from the stones. "My discipline... It did not take my freedom. It gave it to me." It is the link between self-discipline and freedom. It is the only thing that has given me the power, the actual, real-world power, to build the life my blueprint showed me. This was the final lesson. The great work of Liam's apprenticeship was complete. He now understood that true freedom is not the absence of restraint, but the presence of a self-chosen direction and the power to walk in that direction. The climax of our story is not a single dramatic event, but a long, quiet, and beautiful montage of the years that followed. We see Liam at his worksite, day after day, season after season. We see him on bright, sunny days, laying his stones with a song in his heart. We see him on cold, rainy days when he is tired and unmotivated, yet he still shows up, honoring his habit, laying his small, single stone with quiet determination. We see him applying all of Elspeth's disciplines. We see him preparing his simple, healthy meals to manage his willpower. We see him marking off another successful day in his journal, the chain of his habits growing impossibly long. We see him politely, but firmly turning down an invitation from a friend, honoring the sacred time he has allocated to his deep work, protecting his focus. And in moments of doubt, we see him pause, close his eyes, and visualize the stars, reconnecting with his ultimate goal. Slowly, steadily, miraculously, the observatory rises. The foundation gives way to walls, the walls to arches, the arches to a great domed roof. The progress is imperceptible on any single day, but undeniable over the years. His daily practice of self-discipline is creating a magnificent reality. His productivity is not a result of frantic, stressful bursts, but of calm, consistent, daily effort. He is achieving mastery, both of his craft and of himself. It is a masterpiece, an elegant stone tower that seems to kiss the heavens, a testament to the quiet, formidable power of daily, disciplined action. On the night of its unveiling, the entire city gathers, not in the library plaza, but on Liam's hill. Liam stands at the top of his observatory, looking at the breathtaking tapestry of the stars through the great silvered telescope he built with his own hands. Elspeth, now very old and frail, joins him. They stand together in silence for a long time, watching a distant nebula drift through the cosmos like a celestial flower. "You have finished your blueprint, Liam," Elspeth says, her voice filled with a quiet pride. "Yes," Liam replies, not taking his eye from the lens. "But I have come to realize something. The most important thing I built was not this tower." "Oh?" "No," he says, turning his gaze from the stars to his own steady hands, and then to the face of his wise, old mentor. "The true masterpiece was the man I had to become in order to build it." He had become the architect, not just of a stone tower, but of a life. He had learned the ultimate truth, that self-discipline is the most profound creative act. It is the art of shaping our own character, our own destiny, moment by moment, choice by choice. It is the quiet, daily, and heroic work of building the grand cathedral of our own soul. Years turned like pages in a great celestial book. Liam's observatory did not grow old. It grew sacred. It stood not merely as stone and lens, but as a living symbol and anthem cast in architecture, a monument not to power or wealth, but to inner mastery. Its dome gleamed beneath moonlight and rain alike, unbowed by time. And within its silent chamber, where stars once whispered only to the night, children now gathered with notebooks and wide eyes, young builders with trembling hands, holding their first blueprints. But something even deeper had begun. Word of the tower traveled far. Artists crossed deserts to paint it. Philosophers crossed oceans to sit in its silence. Kings and beggars, inventors and monks, seekers of truth and survivors of failure, they came not to worship Liam, but to remember something they had forgotten in themselves. The observatory had become not a destination, but a reminder that greatness is not born in grand gestures, but carved from daily devotion. Liam, though now older, remained lean and sharp-eyed. His hands, gnarled and calloused, still laid a stone each morning, not in the mortar of buildings, but in the lives of others. He mentored with fierce compassion. He demanded of his students what Elspeth had demanded of him. Not brilliance, but consistency. Not charisma, but character. Not flashes of genius, but sustained intent. And quietly, without fanfare, Ethelberg changed. The city that was once a museum of unfinished dreams slowly began to hum with steady labor. The broken arches were completed. The abandoned gardens bloomed. The forgotten ships finally sailed. A new culture emerged, not one obsessed with speed or spectacle, but one that revered the process. People no longer asked, "What do you want to be?" They asked, "What stone did you lay today?" Apprentices no longer envied completed works. They studied the chains in the builder's journals. The number of days shown up, the days when they worked through sorrow, through heartbreak, through fatigue. These were badges of honor greater than titles or wealth. And the idea that discipline was rigid or joyless? It became laughable. Joy, they now saw, was the byproduct of living in alignment with one's blueprint. And though Liam became revered, he never sought recognition. He walked among the people. He helped lift stones with them. He shared stories of his own faltering, of the days he almost gave up, the whispers he still sometimes heard. He made it clear, mastery was not a peak you reached, but a path you walked. Every day, until your last. And then one morning, the path ended. Liam was found seated in the observatory, alone but peaceful, a pen still in hand. On the desk before him, his final journal entry read, "Even today, the stone felt heavy, but I carried it with love." There was no mourning in Ethelberg that day, only reverence. The city bells did not toll, but rang with soft, measured rhythm, mimicking the sound of a chisel on stone. At his memorial, it was not officials or dignitaries who spoke, it was students, hundreds of them, young and old. Some had built homes, others had founded schools. One wept as she described finishing her first painting after 10 years of hesitation. Another shared how she had finally confronted her fear and started the library her grandmother had dreamed of. Every story began with the same phrase. Because of one man who laid a stone, I laid mine. But the story didn't end with Liam. Not even close. Generations passed. Ethelberg became a global symbol of self-realization. Other cities began adopting blueprint ceremonies, gifting visions to their youth. The 5 disciplines were taught in every school, not as doctrines, but as foundations for flourishing. Schools became less obsessed with grades and more focused on the architecture of character. Entire institutions were modeled after the observatory. Quiet, focused, reverent places where thought and work met in perfect balance. On the centennial of Liam's first stone, a monument was built, not a statue of the man, but a great spiral path that wound through a public garden with plaques along the way. Each plaque bore the name of someone who had finished their blueprint. The final plaque had no name. It simply read, "There is no masterpiece greater than becoming the person you were meant to be." The observatory still stands. And if you go there today, you will find a quiet custodian, not famous, not flamboyant, just someone who rises with the sun, sweeps the steps, and lays a stone. If you ask them why, they'll smile and say, "Because someone laid one for me." And if you listen closely in the quiet hours, when the stars shimmer in the dark and the city sleeps, you may hear the soft echo of Elspeth's voice, carried by time. There is no magic. There is only discipline, born of love. So if you're still waiting for your moment, stop waiting. Start laying. One stone. Every day. It's not about building a tower. It's about becoming the one who could.